Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode of GEEXX Reads. So today I want to talk about the final book in the Dragon Riders of Burn trilogy, The White Dragon, an image of which you will see over my shoulder because, as I said, the last one, all I have is a hardcover book, and it doesn't have individual covers, and this thing's starting to show its age because I did pull it out and reread it, and the cover got torn. As you can see. The book is 40 years old, so more than that. It was 15. Yeah, book is definitely more than 40 years old. So that being said, it's in remarkably good shape for a 40-year-old book that has been read and reread multiple times, including in the last few weeks. I think it's sort of odd that this is the capstone of the trilogy because there is a second trilogy where the first couple books take place before The White Dragon. So chronologically, it doesn't make sense, but I guess that's how they organized it. Anyway, and the other thing that's different about this book is that the first two books basically centered around Flora and Lessa as the leaders of Bendon Weir. If you recall, if you read the first book, Lessa gave up her inheritance as Lord Holder of Ruatha Hold to GEEXX, who was born the same day that Flora killed GEEXX's father in a duel. So we were introduced to a very young GEEXX, probably around 11 or 12 years old, as the events of the last book. And he wound up accidentally impressing a dragon. To a bit of spoilers for the last book, he noticed a smaller egg set apart from the others that was rocking but wasn't hatching. And due to the nature of his own birth being, having to be cut out of his mother's body because she died trying to give birth to him, he tried to save the dragon egg, and he broke it open with himself and impressed the dragon inside of it. This caused a lot of problems because Lord Holders cannot be dragon riders. They're supposed to run their respective holds. And also he's a minor. He has not officially been recognized as Lord of Ruatha Hold. He is basically a ward of someone who's been appointed as regent of Ruatha Hold, an older gentleman named Lytol, who used to be a dragon rider whose dragon died. He was basically given the responsibility initially to because he's a very competent man. After he lost his dragon, he went back to being a craftsman. He was competent at that. They figured, well, it'll give him it's something to do, and they trusted him. So he's been under the stewardship of Lytol, and now he has a dragon. The dragon, because it was a smaller egg, is an unusual color. It is white, hence the title, The White Dragon. Dragon's name is Ruth. Ruth is unusual not just for his size. He seems to be remarkably intelligent for a dragon. He is very skilled at flying. Being smaller means he can maneuver much more easily. He is friendly. He is open. The fire lizards love him. They follow him wherever he goes. Partly because he is so small. He is probably about I don't know how well you can see the image, but he's probably half the size of most dragons in the books. Basically about the size of a small horse, although he is fairly strong and can carry more than one rider. He is basically not much bigger than a horse with wings. As opposed to some of the other dragons, which are about the size of elephants. So if the covers are anything to speak of. So about this book. This book takes place a few years after the events of the second book. He is older. He's a teenager now. And being a teenager, he's starting to behave like one. He is getting fed up with people treating him like a child. He wants some independence. And he wants to be a proper dragon rider, which basically people are not allowing him to be. He's not allowed to train with the other dragon riders because he has to learn how to run the hold. They eventually consent. They know he's a young boy. He's going to do it anyway. Might as well give him some proper training. Because really, if any of us had a dragon, we would go out and fly on it. Even if we had to make our own, even if we had to just tie ourselves on with rope without a proper saddle or harness, we would find a way to make it done. So, as a character goes, he's I don't know, I wouldn't want to say he's a typical teenager. In some ways, he definitely is. But from the reading that I get, he's much more sedate and passive and respectful than a lot of teenage boys that I have known. Doesn't mean they can't be, but he's not nearly as aggressive. Usually, he has a few failing moments in the book, but that's not the only things going on. The story unfolds from his perspective. As I said, it's a departure from the previous books, which are from the same point of view with a few others thrown in. This is told from the perspective of an entirely new person that we've never really seen their perspective from before, save from during the hatching in the previous book and the events leading up to it. So a departure, which is funny enough what they did with the second trilogy. The first two books are from the point of one character. Third book is from a point of view of a secondary character. So those two trilogies have that much in common. There was, of course, problems with the old timers. Again, in the previous book, they had a failed mating flight with two queens. Both queens wound up dying. I won't tell you what they do in this book, but they're not willing to go out peacefully at all. And they're breaking a lot of rules and pissing a lot of people off to do it. But there are other things too. The pacing of the book I found a little bit off, because I did reread it before doing this review. You know, GEEXX is a nice young man. And he has some interesting adventures. He is resourceful. He is intelligent. Fairly brave. He is friends with Flora and Lessa's son, which is mentioned in the last book as well, but he actually doesn't make much of an appearance in this book, aside from a couple. He has a very close friendship with Meneley, who's the primary character of the first two books in the other trilogy. He gets along well with some of her friends. There's definitely some interaction between the characters of the second trilogy and the first trilogy in this book. I'm trying to think I can talk about anything, like give anything away. The first part of the book I pretty much told. You know, he's a young man. He's getting fed up with being treated like a kid. Wants to strike out on his own, be independent. Is learning to try and be a dragon rider. That's pretty much the first chunk of the book. I would say the book is kind of broken into three parts. First part being him being a teenager. Second part is the problem with the old timers. And the third part is some of the aftermath of that, but more about other events. Let's see. Well, I'm gonna give a spoiler away for the finale of the book. So spoiler here ahead. It's not a major spoiler really, but GEEXX gets sick. Partly because of his adventures with the old timers, which takes place on some of which takes place on the southern continent. He winds up having to convalesce in the southern continent, and the story basically develops from there, as there are some people are exploring the southern continent, finding out about it, and there are some issues with not the old timers, but some of the people who settled there under the old timers, and there are some discoveries that are made about ancient Pern, about some of the early landings, before they went back to living like people in the Middle Ages. And that's about all the spoilery stuff I'm going to give. Was it a good... Does it hold up well? I think it does. For a book that's as old as it is, and as the trilogy goes, as far as this trilogy itself, the first book is pretty much the weakest, in my opinion. But again, it was also 2 short stories that were combined and expanded to make a full novel. So, and it was Anne McCaffrey's also one of her early debut novels. Second book was a bit more polished. Third book, The White Dragon, is also fairly polished, but it feels more like it was geared towards a younger audience. And I'm wondering if that's just me, or if it's because the main protagonist was a teenager. But I'm not sure. It still holds up fairly well. But I think it's a fairly simple read, but then again, the other 2 books were as well. So I think it has aged well. Just that it's not that complex. There's not a lot of subtleties or nuance. Book to store again. Me and holding on to old things. I should just take the paper cover off, but I can't bring myself to. But yeah, it's like I said, it's fairly straightforward, not very complex. It's not, I don't think it's pretending to be. It's not trying to, unlike some other sci-fi fantasy stories, there's no hidden messages here. It's just a story that's supposed to be read and enjoyed, And for what it's worth, it's decent. I like it. B+, maybe A-. It's hard to say. A- because of nostalgia. B+ for how well I think it holds up. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. If you like this crap, I don't know what to tell you. I got other crap. It's not any better than this. And until next time, good hunting.